First, here is the planned releases we have coming up. We have the OTP 24 track, which is currently the latest release, where we have a service release in mid-December and a planned one in March. And then we are coming up with the release candidates, three of them for OTP 25, the beginning in February, and then we'll have one in March and one in April, and then the real release of OTP 25 in May. And things that are coming in OTP 21 that we are working on is the JIT support for ARM64-bit. It is improvement in the JIT regarding line numbers that it can give to external tools like perf and GDB, so that you can get line number and even source code shown when you are using these tools. The JIT is also optimized with the help of type information from the compiler. We are working on language features. One mechanism for enabling and disabling language features as such, and one work is ongoing regarding the value-based error handling, which you might know about EEP 49 from Fred Heber. It's his ID, and we are currently working on it. You will get nice error messages when you have something wrong in a construction of binaries. We have also, it's a user contribution, this Erlang float to binary with an option short, which is really efficient using a new algorithm for calculating the shortest text representation of a binary that you can convert back to the same binary, the same float again. Sorry. We have some other. We are working on dialyze improvements. Cannot promise which one it will be, but some. There will be some. We are working on support for OpenSSL 3.0. We get nice error messages in SSH and socket. And we have a new module pair which will replace the slave module. It's extensively used in our test cases. And that's also a user contribution. And the timer module has been modernized. That's also a user contribution. And finally, today actually, the Erlang.org website was launched with a new implementation and a slightly new look and feel, and improved search in the documentation, which is really nice, and improved appearance on small screens, for example, mobile phones. We also recently launched the Erlang forums, a discussion forums for discussing Erlang and other Beam languages. It's a sister forum to the Elixir forum, using the same technology and so on. That's all for me there. So now we can open for questions. Have I stopped sharing? Yes. So now it's no slides more. And I have John Högberg together with me answering questions.
Kenneth, I'll start. There was a question in the Whova app. And from Brujo, it says, same question as always. Is there any progress towards the selection of an Erlang code formatter?
I can say that there is no progress in that area, actually. I have played around with the AL format from WhatsApp a little bit, but it has stumbled on things that it didn't format nice in our code. So I haven't dug deeper into that yet. So
I guess I can keep going down the list in Huva. Are there any breaking changes between OTP 24 and 25?
You mean if the question is about incompatibilities, I don't think there are many crucial incompatibilities. Actually, there are breaking changes in regarding new functionality, but like what I said in the slides here about some news in the language area with this mechanism for enabling and disabling new language features, which is there to make it easier to release a new language feature as experimental first, and you can turn it on only in the module where you want to use it. And if there are incompatibilities, it will only have impact on that module and not on all the other modules. So that is introduced to make it easier to introduce other language features. And I suppose,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I suppose the JIT support for ARM64 is really interesting, but maybe some or many of you are already running that on your Mac M1s or what you have.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. You know, how much further can we push JIT and performance as far as the beam goes?
Quite a lot further, I'd say. We've only begun to scratch the surface. Right now, what we have is what you could call a baseline JIT. We can always add a more complicated tracing JIT, like those used in V8 on top of this. So I'd say that we have a long way to go.
But you have already introduced usage of type information from the compiler, which can, I mean, with that information, you can generate more efficient or less code for certain instructions. And there will be more type information later, I suppose.
Yeah, the PR we have open at the moment only scratches the surface. It's only very basic type information. Like, is this a tuple? Can this be a fun? Can this be an integer? And so on. We're looking at adding more complicated range analysis so that we can reduce most arithmetic to basic machine instructions, so they don't have to concern themselves with big nums, for instance. That will be a pretty huge performance win for certain kinds of code.
I have another question, and this one always seems to come up. Does the OTP team have interest in introducing types, such as the type project that WhatsApp had started?
We are interested in introducing better types than we have today, and better tools for checking that there are type errors. Yes,
right.
But maybe it's hard to go all the way to what WhatsApp were doing. At least it will have to be in some steps in that case.
Yeah, we have no plans on imposing a fully static type system. We're going to stay dynamic, but our current plan is to have type analysis sort of tacked on. Think dialyzer, gradualizer, etc. We're looking more at those things than trying to change the language into being statically typed.
And maybe we can also introduce more type checking and from in the compiler, that the compiler can tell you that you are doing something wrong, or at least that the code does not correspond to the type spec.
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I think actually someone has a talk today around wedging dialyzer into the compiler itself. I'll have to double check on that. But is that kind of what you're getting at, Kenneth?
Not really, not the whole dialyzer into the, but letting the compiler be more aware of the specs and at least warn if you are completely breaking the spec or it cannot work. I'm just thinking loud here, but I would be interested in a development in that area. Maybe John knows more that if it's possible or not.
Well, everything is possible, but I'm not sure we'd want to cram that into the compiler. The compiler already has a type analysis pass that resembles dialyzer, but it's quite late, late in the compilation process. And if you want to start throwing around warnings at that point, you will get a ton of false positives. Doing the type analysis earlier would end up, well, doing the same work twice. And yeah, I'm open to it, but we don't have any plans on doing that at the moment.
But isn't it so today that the compiler is just accepting the spec, for example, without further checking at all if it's reasonable at all? I think it only swallows the syntax for it.
Yeah, the compiler just looks at it and sees, hey, this is a spec, and then it goes along its merry way. It does not inspect the contents. It's I think it just throws it away, actually.
Yes. So it could do some more, maybe meaningful checks there. If it doesn't get too complicated.
Is there anything long-term roadmap wise that you're looking forward to?
There are some, I mean, long term. It's some more language features or language cleanups that could be possible with this new enable disable mechanism. There could be maybe other way to start to configure the system when you start up. I think we have done some work there, but we have not concluded how we want it to work. We have more, I mean, that's not so much about the system, but we want to find a better way to document the system and generate the documentation.
Yeah, that's something I've been getting very close to getting more interested in and involved in myself. Have y'all kicked around any ideas internally around switching in documentation systems?
Yes, I mean, I want to go away from our heavy use of XML in separate files, and maybe go more to the way that you can document inside the source code for the APIs.
Yeah, one idea we've talked about within the EEF building and packaging group is ASCII doc. Is that something you've talked about internally?
Yes, and I'm in favor of ASCII doc compared to Markdown for the bread text, so to say, because it has a more formal mapping to, for example, XML and to the backend and so on. So I think maybe Markdown is a bit too limited and not so standardized.
It's a moving target, definitely.
Yes. So ASCII docs seemed very nice, and one nice thing with both Markdown and ASCII doc is that you can render them directly in the GitHub interface, for example. I think the whole book about Beam, written by Erik Stenman, is written in ASCII doc.
You mean the Beam book?
Yes. So when I saw it first, I tried to convert one of our man pages for a module to ASCII doc, and I think it worked quite nice.
That is a today I learned. I just went and looked at the repository. Did not know that I'm looking at the chapters right now. It's all in ASCII doc, so I'm gonna have to dig in there some.
And I think there is the ASCII doc parser written by Loic, the cowboy man. So we have the tools in Erlang. But on the other hand, Markdown seems to be more mainstream. But anyway, something like that. Markdown or ASCII doc and documentation inside the source and things like that is what we are looking for.
Thanks for answering that question for me.
So about the ARM JIT, are we expecting similar efficiency gains that we got with x86, or is it going to be above and beyond based on some learnings from the x86?
It's going to be a fair bit better than the x86 JIT, especially on Mac, since the interpreter is rather slow on Mac, since it uses Clang, and Clang is pretty bad at compiling first-class labels. So at least on Mac, the improvement is far greater relative to the interpreter than the x86 JIT is. And the code size is also, it's far more compact. It's even more compact than the interpreter, in fact, which is quite nice. And due to the abundance of registers on ARM, we've been able to pack the first 6 beam registers into actual machine registers, which has been quite nice. So it's a bit more efficient than the x86 JIT, but I can't promise you all that much. It's going to be very good relative to the interpreter. It's going to be a bit better than x86, but not by an order of magnitude.
Great, thank you. I guess along those lines, and I'm not too familiar with the implementation of a JIT, but is there shared work among the two so that as you make improvements to x86, you also see those on the ARM side, or is it just a lot of duplicative work there?
We tend to share the same concepts. We share a tiny bit of code actually, but for the most part, they are separate because each architecture is, well, they are quite different from each other, and something that is efficient on one is quite inefficient on the other. So we tend to keep them just separated. Each instruction also has a handwritten template, which we copy paste sort of, and the templates are completely different for ARM and x86. So we cannot share those. We can share platform agnostic things, and there aren't all that many of those.
Thank you.
Hi, Kenneth. One question. Generating some XML representation from a Erlang module, taking specs into account, is that something that's doable from the AST?
Don't
Yes.
we do that already?
Yes,
You are, but I've not found a. Well, I'm not that good in parse transformations, but is there maybe like a tutorial that shows that? Because, for instance, if you have restrictions, right, it becomes very similar to other things that you're doing in OpenAPI or in Yang models, right, where you're trying to limit what this variable can be and so on.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you are. I mean, we are generating XML from with a tool edoc, which is parsing the whole Erlang module and collecting the type specs and are using them for API documentation purposes. We are doing the same in our own OTP XML toolchain called erl.gen, where we also are looking into the source code of each module and collecting the type and function specs and using them for documentation purposes. But was it more like you were trying to use it as a more like a Google proto buff thing where you are
Yeah, something like that, where you can transform into other formats, but use this basically Erlang module in order to describe those primitives, which goes in the direction of UBF that we just saw, probably.
I don't think the type notation is maybe containing all info you need for that right now. I'm not sure.
I'll take a look at edoc Erldoc. Thanks. That's the pointer I need.
Okay, guys, I think we have time for one more question. Sean, if you want to ask one from the Hoover chat.
Sure. Are there any plans? I'm sorry, I had to step away for a moment if this one has been answered. Are there any plans for map comprehensions, similar to list comprehensions and binary comprehensions?
Isn't there a pull request regarding that we have to make a decision about? I think we have got the contribution about that.
Yeah, and I think an EEP as well, but we haven't had a technical board meeting about it.
So we will handle it as soon as we come to that part of the backlog. So it's probable. I mean, it's possible that it comes into the system. Yes.
All right, John, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Kenneth and John, and everyone have a good rest of your day.